when Jesus is dying on the cross, one of the things that we can see is that we have the people at the bottom of the cross, such as the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and we have the bad thief on the cross, all saying, if you are the Son of God, get yourself down off that cross. They're looking for that sign for proof that they can believe. Jesus never gives it to them, and so they laugh at the fact that this man who claimed to be the Son of God ends up dying on a cross. But doesn't Thomas do the same thing? Except he doesn't laugh, he gets angry. If Jesus is the Son of God, then he would not have died on that cross. So he says, don't give me this resurrection story because I'm not going to believe it. That's not doubt, that's anger. That's not, well, I don't know if I can believe it. That's, I refuse to believe. And he refuses to believe because he's disappointed. He's angry that Jesus did not meet his expectations. In the story, we learn that Jesus exceeds his expectations. But it's not until the end that he realizes that he was wrong. That in fact, God's ways are above our ways and God's thoughts are above our thoughts, as Isaiah taught. And so we see Thomas coming to learn that simple fact. But let's focus on ourselves for a minute. How many times do we do the same thing? Or how many times do you deal with people who do the same thing? If God exists, this would happen. If God exists, that would happen. If God exists, when I prayed for a job, I'd have one tomorrow. If God exists, then my grandmother wouldn't have died. There'd be peace in the world. There'd be no more war. Whatever. And we hear this all the time. If God exists, this is what would happen. It's the same thing that Thomas did. It's the same thing the Pharisees and even the bad thief on the cross did. Putting God in a specific route that he has to answer our prayer the way we want him to answer our prayer. What if I were to tell you that the sun rises in the west and sets in the east? You'd never see the sun rise or set, and for the most part, you'd see nothing but darkness, and when you saw light, you'd have no idea where it came from. Well, in the same way, when we turn around and we ask God to meet our expectations of how we should answer our prayers, it's kind of like we're turning around and saying, we want the Lord to make the sun rise in the west and set in the east. And so we look for that to happen, and when it doesn't happen, we say, all I see is darkness. But God's ways are above our ways, and God's thoughts are above our thoughts. And so he's going to respond in the way that God will respond, which oftentimes is different than we expected, and other times it's beyond our expectations. And so it's best for us to be humble before the Lord and say, show me how you're going to lead me down this path. Let me not put my expectations upon you, but let me be surprised as you surprise us all the time. And so that's the attitude that Thomas learns when he finally humbles himself and says, my Lord and my God, because he's recognized the fact that he can't pigeonhole God, and neither can we. Thomas teaches us to always be in joyful expectation, no matter what goes wrong in our lives, but to trust that the Lord is leading us, and even to trust when things go completely wrong, that he is leading us through our trials and tribulations. Never forget the words of St. Rose, the very first saint of the Americas, who said, if people understood how much their difficulties led them closer to God, they'd ask for more of them. And I quoted that on CNN when I was on CNN one time. And so we look at that and we see that powerful reality that Thomas learns. God's ways are above our ways. God's thoughts are above our thoughts. And Jesus teaches Thomas, do not pigeonhole God, but to trust, and he will respond. God bless you.